Good evening, YouTube viewers and subscribers. Today, this engine arrived in the mail from a awesome subscriber. He sent this engine to me, wanting me to do a look inside, run this thing, maybe do some static thrust readings. I'm curious to know if anybody that's watches this video has ever heard of this engine. LUX model engine. It says high quality. So the story behind this engine is this fellow modeler who lives in Canada bought this engine, I think he said around 1991. Bought two of them actually, one to have as a spare. So he sent me one of his engines. This, as you can see, is a 40 EP-ABC, whatever that means. Power and precision. I mean, the box is pretty generic looking. He thinks that this engine was manufactured or is marketed, sold in Russia at that time. So I'm opening this box. This isn't the first time I've opened it. But it's got, it's a standard looking two-stroke engine. Let's see, there's nothing there. Let's take this thing out and give this engine an inspection. Now, there was nothing else in the box, no instruction manual, nothing. And unfortunately, there is no marking on the box itself that describes or says where it was manufactured, where it's from, or anything. Now, the thing that's weird is I keep hearing something rattling in here, and I'm certain that it's a baffle. Well, the end cap doesn't feel loose. It's just weird that that's rattling. So this is just your standard two-stroke muffler. So I'm going to try and determine, I mean, this looks a lot like an OS muffler, possibly a Magnum. Actually, from the time period, 91 could possibly be like a Royal. Here's the carb. Now this engine, let me zoom in some here. This engine really has no markings on it whatsoever. There's nothing on the front of the car. Nothing here on the side. Although the milling, the way this milling looks on the side here, there was part of a ridge here, and it looks like as part of the final process they just milled whatever the identifier was there. You know what? And the way that looks, I'll have to do some research online. This could actually be a Royal engine that they eliminated that from. Now it looks like they also did not, I'm going to take that off, did not put any stamp, any kind of marking here. So only from the box I know that it says it's a 40. And if you look here, it is an ABC. There's no ring there. I mean, this thing doesn't look like it's had much, if any, runtime at all. I mean, it looks brand new. According to this subscriber, it has been run, but man, it really doesn't look like it at all. The bearings feel absolutely pristine. Let's take a look at the top of this piston before I take the head off. I'm going to take the head off, and I'm going to take the back plate off, and that's all I'm going to do to this engine. I mean, it's a new engine. There's no point in doing any more than that. Let's get this up to the top, dead center. Yeah, you can see there. There's no carbon on there at all. I mean, if this thing was run, it was run one time, but I mean, honestly, I don't even smell the evidence of any kind of running at all. So with that said, let's see what the inside here looks like. Hopefully this will be able to tell us if it's really been run or not. Hi, Chloe. Okay, so before I show you that, no gasket at all. Not even one of those clear ones like on a current Magnum or ASP. So, a little bit of maybe some swirling there, but it doesn't really look like it's been run. There's oil on here. This is oil. I smell oil. It's not oil from a run. It smells like tooling oil. Now look at this. Holy crap. If that's been run, I'm a monkey's uncle. I mean, what I'm smelling in there, it smells a lot like 3-in-1 oil. I mean, it doesn't, it does not smell like there's any kind of fuel residue at all. I don't think this engine's ever been run. So, it's good for me to know that, because even though it's an ABC engine, when I run this thing, I need to kind of treat it like a break-in, but with an ABC engine, you run it pretty close to near peak anyway, so I don't think there's a big issue there. Lastly, let's just take this head off, just for the heck of it, just so you can see just a nice shiny piston, because that's all you're going to see. Not going to be any surprises in here, believe me. But the casting quality of this engine, it looks very nice. I mean, it's from the early 90s, and there weren't a whole lot of companies making really crappy engines back then. I think ASP was maybe just starting out, and maybe they had some crappy looking castings. But this casting, we'll take a little bit closer look at the engine casting after I get this head off. But the casting looks, I'm not going to say OS quality, but it definitely looks like early, maybe Thunder Tiger, Magnum, Royal type quality. Actually, I don't even think Royal, because I think Royal had a lot more shiny parts. Okay, so if there's a gasket under there, so let me just do this real quick. I don't want those screws to drop out. It doesn't look like this thing's ever been run. There's not even a hint of any kind of carbon deposit there at all. And it's got a pinned guide here. I mean, we can easily just pull this thing out. Look at this sleeve. This sleeve is just beautiful. And it's nice that it's pinned so you don't forget where the exhaust ports are. It's pinned. That's funny. It's got a notch for a pin, but it doesn't have a pin. So that's kind of interesting. Well, now that we've gone this far, let's just pop this piston out. Might as well, right? Okay, I do see the chamfered side, so this side went to the front. Yeah, I'm not seeing any evidence that this engine was ever run at all. What I'm feeling and the way that smells like, you know, tooling oil or 3-in-1 oil has been put in there. I'm almost wondering. Double ball bearing, supported crankshaft. Very smooth operation. Very nice engine. So this is nice. Okay, so we do have some asymmetry here in this connecting rod. So this part goes towards the back. This part goes on towards the front of the engine. So I want to put this thing back together. Very nice. Nice engine. Now, let's drop this piston back in here, even though you can turn it, which is not good. Let's make sure we get this exhaust ports lined up properly, even though there's a pin or a slot in that sleeve, but there isn't actually a pin in the crankcase. So that's kind of confusing. That's very interesting, actually. It really makes me wonder where this engine really originated from. Because if it was like a major manufacturer and then they just went and milled this out to hide the real manufacturer, you wouldn't think Royal or any place like that would have a slot in the sleeve and then not a pin in the case to hold it. So that's that's weird. So anyway, this will be a feature of a break-in run, a couple runs probably, because I'll probably do at least one tank of, you know, breaking this thing in, and then do some static thrust readings on it, and see what kind of RPM numbers and static thrust numbers we get out of this little LUX EP40 ABC engine. Pretty interesting little engine. Now here, if I had some other engines out in front of me, I could probably tell you, maybe some of the viewers can say, that should be an indicator of where this thing was made, because not all two-stroke engines had a little dimple like that cast in the back plate. So that's, I'm going to have to do some research and look through some of my engines maybe and see if I can find one that's similar to this. Aside from that, it's a nice little engine. And we'll see if it runs as well as it looks. So anyway, thank you for watching. Okay, here's an addendum to my look inside of this LUX engine. I just so happened, after I finished filming that first segment, I wanted to look through some of my other engines to see if I saw any ones that were very similar to this, and amazingly I did. This engine here is my OS 46 SF engine. Now, I'm not saying this is an OS engine, but it is a direct copy of the OS engine, and if you look, there are so many striking similarities, it's not even funny. It almost looks like they use the same castings. The casting quality is not quite the same, but I mean, if you look at these areas here at this exhaust and how the exhausts are basically identical. The shaping here. Another thing is, let me zoom in a bit here, a bit more I should say. Look at these carbs. This is the LUX, this is the OS. But I mean, if you look at how those carbs or castings are, they're damn near identical. And another thing I looked at is a side profile of the castings, and you can see how very similar they are too in the webbings and everything. Now the prop washers are somewhat different, and the mounting for the carb is obviously different. I see a big difference here too. This webbing here is not nearly as prominent as it is there. So obviously it's not the same casting, but it is damn near a copy. Now, I was mentioning the back plate. Look at this. It's got those. Well, I'm not sure the purpose of that portion of the, unless they were going to put a nipple there, a port, for some reason. But those back plates are extremely similar also. Now, I'm going to move this OS engine out of the way. When I was putting the carb and exhaust on this engine so that I could do the side-by-side comparison, I found something rather disturbing. For a brand new engine, this is really disturbing. Check this out. This screw won't tighten at all. Now, let me take this off and show you why. This one screws in, this one just pulls out. Now, this is just poor manufacturing quality here. Let's see if I can, my camera's going to want to focus that. I'm not even sure if you're going to be able to see it. There are threads in there, but you can see it looks like they're kind of, you know, the first 5 or 6 where it's really going to engage, you're just not, it looks like there's threads cut all the way in there, but they're just, there's more material removed or whatever, so there's really not a good surface for those threads to grip on. It's really kind of hard to see. If I pull this screw out, and if this screw were longer, it does actually thread in. So it's just a matter of the first, I don't know, the actual part when it goes through the engine, the actual first third here of it where it actually threads in and engages is just not there for whatever reason. Either there's a casting flaw or something, but I mean, I see threads there, it's just that they're too loose. You can see this actually just pushes in. It pushes in this far before any threads even start to engage. I mean, that's a huge deal. So what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to try, in the time that I've got this engine, I'm going to see if I can't go to a hardware store, an Ace hardware store, and pick up some longer screws so that I can at least, I mean, obviously I could use a screw. I could just use the muffler off my OS engine. That's not a big deal. I've got other exhausts that I could use to run this engine, but for the owner of this engine, he may not be aware of this, and I want to go at least get a longer set of screws so that, you know, I really want to use this exhaust when I run this engine, because, I mean, that's one of the things you do. You check to make sure if it leaks or it seals or how it sounds and that type of thing. So right now I really can't even use this because, you know, over the course of a run, that thing's just going to slide out and get lost. So anyway, it does look like this was a direct copy of an OS engine. I just still don't know where it was made, obviously, but it looks like its closest relative would be an OS engine.